Sombra's not hypermobile. Oh my gosh. Bro, is this the Blizzard forums? Like, what has happened? What is this subreddit? You're competitive Overwatch. Been chewing on this one for a little bit because my response is, and? Yes, officer, guilty as charged, okay? Yeah, so this was a very interesting comment section because I generally have a higher standard for this subreddit. Competitive Overwatch, I think, is a pretty darn good subreddit when it comes to, but I don't know what happened with this video. I don't know if the reach was different or the demographic was different, or because it's funny because even within this community. So let me give some context here. So this is a broken by concept hero tier list video. And I think I made some people upset with this video. I'm not gonna lie. There were a lot of dislikes in this video. It was like a 93%, 94% like dislike ratio, which is pretty low for me. Anyway, I go through and I talk about like different characters that I feel like that are hard to balance because the concept of the character just feels tricky to design with, right? And you can go back and watch the video. It's pretty self-explanatory. In general, I think r/competitive Overwatch is generally like kind of like on the higher skill pilled thing, like characters that have healthier skill curves and so on. But let me disclaimer why I think higher skill characters deserve to be higher ranked. There's a couple of arguments here, okay? Number one, characters with higher skill doesn't necessarily mean that only hard characters are allowed to be meta, but because that characters that reward skill deserve to be higher ranked meta, right? The problem is when we have characters that are lower skill ceilings or lower skill entries, are allowed to be meta, allowed to get more value. It punishes players that spend more time in the game, and that provides a negative feedback loop that discourages players from applying themselves to the game. In addition, it also often is generally the type of kits that aren't appealing to the average player. I made this argument yesterday and this debate right here, actually, where how many Malga mains are out there? Or Bastion mains? I know Herlof's in there somewhere getting mad at me. Reaper mains, right? Now tell me how many Reinhardt players, or Winston players, or Ana players, or Genji players, or Tracer players. People that play as characters, or want to play as characters, even when they're not that good, just because they're fun. Right? There's a huge difference. And it just so happens that coincidentally, a lot of those characters are more skillful. So the answer is why? Well, I think there is a correlation, not perfectly here, but there is a correlation here where characters that are more healthy in designs are also more fun to play because they reward your skill better. There's more choices of your positioning. And I think that's generally true. Now, we talked about yesterday, there is the exception of the rule. I think Mercy players, but I think Mercy even has some good design things. I think her movement is very fluid. I think the character personality is really good. So maybe not exactly her in-game, but her out-of-game design is really good. And so, I don't even think Hog is necessarily an exception. There are a lot of Hog one tricks out there, but how much of that is just because the character has sustain? Right? Although you might say that is part of the design of the character, but it just feels like a cheat way to just play without playing Overwatch. So I think people, if they could have people playing around them or whatever, people would always pick a character like Zenyatta or Echo or Ryan and Genji and Lucio and so on, because those characters have more interesting and dynamic kits. And I think that is honestly just it's basically objective. Like you could look through the numbers about when do people swap or when do people play Reaper Bastion. Nobody rolls out on Reaper Bastion. They always have to swap because I'm playing Winston. At least that's what they think, right? A lot of heroes fall in that category. And even characters that you roll out on, like Lifeweaver, Mercy, most players would choose not to roll out in that character if they can avoid it. And they would only be forced to have a high pick rate with this character if this character was broken. Like you could even run some psychology of like look at all the times when Ryan was weak, check his pick rate. Look at all the times when Lifeweaver was weak or Idiare was weak and check their pick rate and compare those and decide, okay, these characters are really popular. That's why. And the thing is like a lot of people say to me, well, Spilo, not everything is for everybody. That's true. That is true. But I made this analogy yesterday where it's like, the blueberry oyster pie? It's when you go to any business, if a product isn't doing well or isn't very popular, people don't like it, then it is, it's not, you don't sell it anymore. You get rid of the product because you could be spending your resources better elsewhere. But this analogy carries even further because it's not just that, oh, it's not a very popular character, but it's inoffensive. No. A Roadhog or a Mercy or a Moira hurts the enjoyment of other people. So your blueberry oyster pie, nasty, disgusting thing that you're serving up is stinking up the whole joint, right? And it's making everybody enjoy their meal less. So when we talk about healthy character design, it's characters that have healthy skill curves, counterplay, are fun to play versus whatever. And, no character is perfectly fun to play. Everyone just likes losing and dying. But they provide opportunity. And now there are some characters out there that I think that aren't always super popular, but are relatively inoffensive, and that's fine. Like, to me, you look at a character like Sigma. I don't know many Sigma mains, but I don't also know a lot of people that hate Sigma that much. He's kind of more of a balanced character that's not as interesting to play, and that's okay. That's okay. Not every character has to be super popular as long as it's not offending other restaurant goers. So do we have to be stuck in a popular broken hero meta? No, we don't. In fact, we should argue that aim for a not broken hero meta. But if you look at the number of characters, just even in the top 2 tiers, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tanks on an 8 tank loop. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4 supports. Support cast is kind of lame here. And DPS 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right now, Reaper right now I don't think is in a great state. I think he needs some tweaks, only a couple of changes, but I think that once they make those tweaks. So there's a decent number of cast here, right? So, come on, guys. We have what was it? Was it 5, 6 tanks to work with? Or no, more than that, 8 tanks. That's not a limited cast. It's not a limited cast. So I'm not going to talk about what tweaks that I think these characters need. That's an entirely different conversation. But my point being is that I think that there are characters that are people dislike playing versus more, and people don't mind playing versus. And I think that is true. I think that is a close to objective truth. And in general, these characters have some sort of skill expression. And I think one of the arguments that people are going to throw at me in this Reddit post is that I'm a mobility. I only like dive characters. Dive. But that's not even true. It just so happens that dive characters in general have healthier skill curves. But if you look at this, Ashe, Sigma, Junker Queen, Ana, Zen, they're characters that require skill expression, positioning, cooldown management, things that have more direct skill expression and have counters to that skill expression, right? Yo, cheers, Duhan. So I don't even think that it's a fair argument. You could construct a very nice poke comp out of these characters that I think that are reasonable. Cassidy, Zen, Ana, Sigma, Echo, Soldier, Doom, Pharah, right? Would there be annoying aspects of these characters being more popular? Of course. And again, notice that this category also I think needs tweaks for sure. But to me, that's the thing. And I would probably throw Venture into needs tweaks as well, right? So we got another character to throw in there too. So anyway, long story short, I am a little bit dive pilled because mobility is skill expression. It's almost a one-to-one carryover. There are it's not possible to have a mobile character that doesn't have more skill expression than I think anything here, almost without exception. So anyway, long story short, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to be hard heroes. Some of these heroes are relatively simple to start up, but they have good skill curves. So that's it. Well, normally competitive Overwatch is pretty balanced with this because these guys are the first ones to complain about Roadhog metas, Malga metas, Orisa metas, Bastion metas, constant complaining and fair complaining too. I don't know what happened to the reach of this video. Maybe people that don't like me clicked on this or whatever, but it's some of the most brain rot stuff that I have read on Reddit at this level of expectation. Here we go. How many of these broken by concept heroes counter dive? Looks like 7 out of me. Wow, shocker. Remember we talked about this in the SK video. Heroes that are focused mostly on inactivity bleeds into a broken aspect of human psychology where people are generally more risk averse. Thus, the popularity and the frustration of playing these characters. Denying. This is the real reason why high mobility like Tracer and Lucio are dangerous in the first place. One of the must be true. High mobility heroes are the game, which I would agree, yes. The game gets plagued with big stat cheat heroes because there's literally no counter to mobility. There's plenty of counters to mobility. But the problem is how does an Ana counter mobility or a Zen or a Pharah Or, I mean, okay, I hate to be that guy. Like, I don't love Hinder, right? But how does a Cassie or Soldier or a Brigitte counter mobility? Or even a Mei, an Echo, an Ashe, a Sigma, a Junker Queen. There is some, not perfectly, but there is some counterplay, whether it's through mechanics or cooldown management or positioning. It is leaned more into with Overwatch 2, but these characters have tools to deal with that too. Right? Because the other thing with mobility too is its responsibility, is you have to use the leverage the right positions, otherwise you do get punished. So, counterbalance mobility has historically been range. This was not phrased well. I phrased it better later. But heroes that can outplay dive with mechanical cooldown skill play, I'd say imperfectly, Ashe, Ana, Zen, Sigma, heck even Mei fall in this category for me. Most of the broken by concept heroes are one-shots, which are ridiculously hard to balance design in a first-person shooter, and heroes who counterplay engages by pressing a button. Put simpler, I put heroes in the bottom tiers as heroes that don't have a lot of choices with how they do their thing. Remember, choice, right? It doesn't have to be mobility choice, but at least cooldown choice. Something that Smito hammers out a lot. Mobility is definitely the easiest way to open up choice, but it's not the only way. I don't think range is the thing to counterplay dive, really, because Wood is a great prominent counterexample. Mostly range on everyone was countered by mobility. I think that was a good point. I needed to rephrase that. Historically, the thing that counters mobility isn't mobility itself. I see lenient aim abilities. Like even in your example, what's the difference between Widow and the rest of them against mobility? Ashe has a large AoE coach gun, Dynamite. Ashe has need. Because ultimately, a lot of the in-combat benefits and strength of mobility is that it makes the user hard to hit and aim and inherently. And the only way to direct counterplay is something. So that is a good point, that a lot of the mobility is making it harder to hit. But to me, that's true. But you don't the major goal of mobility when it comes to skill play is it opens up positioning choices, I think is the key thing for me. Like, I wouldn't describe Winston as being a very hard hero to hit, but the choice of choosing where you can position is what makes the character hard, right? But that is true. That is true. Being hard to hit is an aspect of mobility, all right? Range and mobility aren't necessarily countered by each other, but more about heroes that lack one have the other. At high level play, the non-brain dead anti-dive heroes are the ones that are able to maintain pressure on dive heroes early and often, especially in favorable matchups. At this point in the game, I think even monikers like dive and poke are a bit antiquated. My main point is that I do think there are ways heroes can outplay dive that require as much skill as a diver. As it is now, a lot of it is map dependent as well. Completely unstoppable because those heroes don't have value ceiling that those heroes have. It's not an accident that most of the better design heroes, in my opinion, have higher skill ceilings. And that's the key thing right there, right? That's the key thing right here. That's the key thing. Okay. I don't disagree, but I feel like the second point is kind of unavoidable because not all heroes have the same level of mobility. Okay, so this is fine, but this is where it gets really messy. Lots of favoritism in this, of course. It's pretty obvious Winston and Ryan would be in top despite problems. Of course they have problems. No character is perfect. They had to play around with entire role passes to fix some issues. Okay, never mind really there. Overwatch players will never be happy to Ryan, Winston, Tracer, Genji, Lucio, and Honor, the only playable characters in Overwatch. And this is the thing, this is where we start to snowball, where it's like, yes, and? I mean, not literally that, right? We've already talked about how that's kind of a hyperbolic statement. But like, yes, because those characters, when you die to a Winston, most players feel that was, I could have done something differently, more so than dying to 90% of the other tank cast. Again, dying is not that, you could only have a Ryan Winston meta. We talked about this with Alec Dawson in person, and he said that he thinks it's really important to mix metas up, right? But you could do so within even just the top 3 roles. It's not even Overwatch Classic, because a lot of the Overwatch Classic characters are really bad too. Characters that have higher skills should earn to be meta in higher ranks. Like, this is such a nonsense statement. And the thing is there are a certain percentage of the population that would not enjoy this. People that generally play these characters. But the vast majority, and the thing is we know this is the case because this is what happened in Season 9. Briefly, is that a lot of the higher skill characters were meta. Tracers and Genjis and Zens and Lucios. And generally people's reception, and obviously that wasn't the only thing there, but the meta was, but the second that Malgar or Orisa or Roadhog are meta, everybody cries. But then we gaslight ourselves by saying, this is just going to be happening. Well, yeah, because the opposite is insanity. The opposite is insanity. You can't say that this is just the typical Overwatch community and then also complain about Roadhog and Orisa and Malgar. Which one is it? Which one is it? At least I'm consistent with my arguments, right? I'm consistent with me. You got to be consistent with your viewpoint. Now, maybe you think that Roadhog is not that bad because you can punish him with season, but this community can't make up its mind. Listen, I love Lucio. He's my main support choice and my first Jade gun. You cannot tell me he hasn't been problematic by design, though. He's been a huge problem for years, and his skill is for characters like Ryan. No. What's the problem with Lucio, guys? We talked about this in the main support versus flex support debate. What's the problem? What other support has his level of skill expression? Go ahead, I'm waiting. And provides that level of utility. Nothing has it. Certainly none of the non-main heal supports, right? Some of the utility supports, they don't do it. It doesn't do anything. Nothing. Kiriko has a good skill curve. Yeah. Maybe Ana, Brigitte at moments. Yeah, which is why Brig is occasionally played, right? The problem is again, you read this and you're like, yeah, it's true. He's basically one-tricked all the time in pro levels, and Ryan's, yeah, but why is that the case? Why? See, this is the same thing with when we were picking on the hit scan video earlier, right? It's the same problem. It's like you say that, oh yeah, Lucio's been played all the time, so clearly Lucio must be broken. No. Why is Lucio played all the time? Because there's no other character that provides speed. Is that a Lucio problem? And are you sure that's the only reason that he's played? Because it just so also happens that his value ceiling is insane. At the highest level, the difference between a great Lucio and a good Lucio is monstrous. Sinfer, thank you for the sub. The support historically has a really bad roster problem. A lot of the support characters provide very little utility and have terrible skill curves. Yeah, surely Space Ranger, right? But this is the thing. You can't say this is a Lucio design problem. You can't do this. Now, if we get more supports with good skill curves and Lucio is still one-tricked all the time and pro meta, okay, we need to take a look at that. But this is the problem. It's a dishonest argument. Not intentionally, but it's lazy. Just call it heroes I like and be done with it. Well, there's a reason why people like these heroes. That's like saying that you're biased. You guys like steak instead of pork rinds and spam. You're just biased. Why do you think so many people like steak? Why do you think? And also the problem is with Ryan, in my opinion, go a lot deeper than just Lucio. I think that that's a fair point, but Mercy Mafia. But the only heroes you get downvoted for mentioning are Lucio, Ryan, and Winston, right? Because I think it takes a relatively intellectually dishonest argument, not completely, but relatively, to trash these characters. What hero design flaw are we willing to talk about with Lucio? What's the flaw? Ryan, we could talk about, maybe, because we talked about it just a few minutes ago, right? Every time I say Tracer needs a fat nerf, I get downvoted Oblivion. Good. This is competitive Overwatch subreddit. What happened to my subreddit? Dive isn't fun to play against. You get deleted so fast, and you don't have a lot of viable counters to it. What is this subreddit? You're competitive Overwatch! And the most challenging, skillful, especially in ranked. Because with the number of poke auto win characters and the number of maps with long sightlines, right? It's insanity to me. What's happened? For dive heroes in particular. Again, why? It's not just dive heroes. That's insane to me. There is not, what do you guys prefer? Do you guys prefer the Malga metas? Do you guys prefer the Widowmaker metas? But no, this is the exact same subreddit will lose their mind. There's no consistency of thought here. Now, I understand that different threads will attract different types of people, right? And weird echo chambers can develop even within certain threads. But it is just funny. And it is just funny. It's that there's only one hero like them. What we really need is another mobility-focused, speed-focused, low healing support Lucio doesn't have. Yes, agreed. What? Lucio is one of the best designs in the game. Rewards high skill expression, enables dynamic comps. Reinhardt needing Lucio is a Reinhardt problem. Yeah, that is true. 90% of Lucio's value is speed boost. Yeah, Partly, but you have to do it. You can't judge things objectively without comparing them to something else.
You know what this is?
How do you know?
This is a
Yo,
trash can.
Questron, thank you for the raid. We're on a current rage bait discussion right now. I appreciate it. I'm getting trolled by the competitive subreddit. I appreciate it. Thank you for the raid. Really? How do we know that 90% is value of speed boost? The only way that you know that is when there's another character that also provides speed boost, right? Then we can go, okay, well then you would choose this character. Well, Lucio, I know this is just a Reddit comment, it's not that deep, but I don't know that this is necessarily the case. A lot of the value of Lucio is also the boop and beat as well. And why has he been meta very strong? We've already answered that question, so I won't keep going on. Ana is not hard to get value on with low mechanical skill. Jeez, man. With charge cancel, closing the distance is not a problem. I don't agree with that. I understand the sentiment, but I don't agree with that. If you walk into valuable space and people don't leave you, they hit them with the hammer. If they do, it's good. Because this comment is kind of correct, but the problem is, remember that the challenge is not necessarily, oh, it's good. You're creating space. Does it feel good? No. And also, does he win brawl trades? Not necessarily either. So this is a well-intentioned comment and is countering some of the misinformation here. Overwatch just isn't about space, it's about winning fights too. What? If you walk into valuable space and they walk away and they kill you from 30 feet because you use all your resources to close the first gap, now you're getting poked on, that's not good, you lose. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Ryan's problem actually really isn't about closing the gap, right? Not necessarily. I mean, it's definitely a weakness, right? I'd say it is but it's more about like once he's closed the gap, he's often not rewarded and able to sustain as much. What? What? Lucy himself isn't a design issue, though. He's fun to play, not really that annoying to play against, and has a high level of skill expression. His main issue is that he offers something no other hero outside of JQ does in his speed boost. This is definitely somewhat problematic. It's not a design issue, it's a design issue. Thanks for elaborating. Bro, this is so stupid. Like, you actually have brain leaking out of your ears. It's not a design issue with Lucio. It's a design issue with the game, everything but Lucio. How are you this dense? His main issue is that he offers something no other hero does in his speed boost. That is not Lucio's fault that not other characters provide the value that he does. Because we've already clarified that, especially in comparison to the entire Overwatch roster, the support roster is polluted with more low skill, low utility, low skill ceiling characters than any other role. And that's why you only see like 4 support heroes in professional Overwatch and have for years. So is it a design issue with the game? Sure. But this guy's just bad faith. This is just bad faith argument again. Yes, she's freaking out over the birds. There's 2 cats, actually. It's not an issue built into Lucio's design. If it didn't make that clear. I mean, I feel like that's just so incredibly clear. Spilo is heavily fires in favor of hypermobile heroes. Really? Really? I mean, I get it. There's definitely more dive at the top here. But we got Kiriko, Sojourn, Sombra. I mean, come on. 3 out of the most hypermobile characters in the entire game. And we've got Reinhardt, Ashe, Sigma, Junker Queen. Pharah is kind of mobile, I will say that. Cassidy, Zarya, Mei, Zen, Ana, Brigitte, and, you know. I mean, give me a break. And remember, we already talked about why that's the case, right? And I think that if you put some thought into that, a lot of mobile heroes are pure cancer to play against because I'm not going to go and say they're fundamentally broken or something. Really? Really? What's the orange tier for? It says needs serious changes. I mean, basically, Questron, everything that you think about Sombra is pretty much what I think. Like the whole perma-invis, which means it limits her ability to assassinate. And then I think the one thing I will say is that I don't like the utility that is solely around hack. I don't know exactly how you solve that issue. Honestly, I think that like hack might be just a really difficult ability to balance. But yeah, anyway, long story short. Genji is super fun play for the Genji, but it's exceptionally annoying playing against Genji because every time you even look at his direction, he's deflecting. Bro, is this the Blizzard forums? Like, what has happened? What is that? This guy's responding to his own comment. What is going on? Where am I in the Blizzard, the Silver Moira like camp? What's going on? And then, dude, he has a lot of crutch abilities. Bro, I remember reading this all the time in the Blizzard forums back in 2018. Every freaking Mercy player with a silver border was saying this. Always a lot of crutch abilities. No, that's not how it works. Having abilities with defensive or offensive capability means it's responsibility. You have to choose if you're going to use deflect to win a duel or defensively. You're going to dash in or dash out with the characters based off of your ability to read the situation, just like Sombra Translocator, right? There's risk, right? This is the worst thing I've ever seen this song. Yes, this is oh my gosh, like what is going on? What has happened to my subreddit? Said hypermobile characters were put lower down. Yes, right? Sombra's not hypermobile. Oh my gosh. What is going on? Sombra's not hypermobile? You mean the character with Translocator, infinite stealth, and increased movement speed is not hypermobile? Like, what? Are you insane? Are you insane? Compared to what? What character is more mobile than Sombra? Ball? Tracer? 2 characters. Maybe. What's happened? I'm telling you guys, something happened in this post. I'm convinced this is a glitch in the Matrix. It's a glitch in the Matrix. Loof, thank you for the sub. It's a glitch in the Matrix. Something has happened here. I'm not even joking. Like the glitch in the Matrix, obviously joke. But something happened where this got shared somewhere because there's no way that this upvotes like there's just no way. This is insane. I think a lot of the dive DPS are incredibly unhealthy for tank. It depends on the tank. This is, all right, if you're going to go into a specific hero, normally Winston, Doom, or Diva, they feel nigh unpunishable. So much has to go right to kill a Genji as Rein. Yeah, that's a good point. That's one of the complaints we talked about with Reinhardt, right? I don't agree with that as a rule, though. I think that, yes, you have to hit crazy knives as a queen to threaten Sombra Tracer, but also, if you hit the knife, they die. Because they generally, except with the exception of maybe Echo, have to play in ranges where they have to get close enough to where you can threaten them. Because the problem is, if you look at the dive character cast, almost without exception, they have to play within engageable ranges. Tracer, Genji, Sombra, right? Venture. I mean, there are exceptions to that rule, right? We talked about that. But a lot of the hypermobile characters, even the tanks themselves, have to risk getting punished to do something. And the tanks that aren't hypermobile, right? Sigma has a little bit of range. He can deal with dive character. It's hard to hit a dive character, but if you hit a volley in a Genji, it hurts. Tracer hurts. And you will be able to reach them. Roadhog has ways of punishing that. Zarya has range to punish that. Ram is a tough one versus dive. I will say that. Reinhardt is also a tough one too, I think. But again, with Rein, there is a lot more. One of the benefits of Rein, because there's always a counterbalance, is that dive characters generally don't do as much damage to you. Like if you're playing Rein versus Genji Tracer, it might be difficult to actually do damage to them, but they don't do as much damage to you either in comparison with a lot of the other characters. Like we talk about like the Zenyatta Discord, and we talk about Junkrat, Hanzo, Ashe, Cassidy. Characters that Rein can reach are also characters that punish Rein very quickly if he makes a mistake. Now again, there are exceptions. Some of the flyers are tricky to balance, but this is true, but is ignoring the complete opposite side of the coin. Pre-season Tint Raid did a lot of damage to Rein. That's fair, yeah. So a lot of the characters that Rein can't reach don't bother him as much. And it's also not really accurate to say that, oh, you only have to do crazy mechanical things, when the fact that you can actually kill the dive characters. Whereas how many times have you guys have knifed an Ashe across the map? Can't do anything versus that. Can't do anything against that. Can't not do anything against a Bastion across the map. Can't do anything versus a Widowmaker. Can't do anything versus a Hanzo. Can't do anything versus that. Unfortunate. GG. Go next. Whoops. Hit a knife onto the Roadhog. Boy, that didn't do it. It hit a rifle on the Orisa. Didn't do anything, right? So like that's the point, is that there's risk and reward there, right? What's it like being permanently tilted IRL? Oh, it's great. It's great. It's great fun. Oh, Tracer more vulnerable to tanks is a take, you know? I don't know. Like, it depends on the tank, you know? I feel like Tracer is relatively vulnerable to tank. If you make mistakes, you do get punished with your HP, even versus some of the less mobile tanks, right? Anyway, I don't want to read through these every single thread. If you can't deal with these characters, you have no agency to win the game. And again, that's just a hyperbolic statement. I'm going to say that word correct one days. I generally think that Moira's design isn't that bad. Oh, no. At her best, she's just a great healer and damage dealer while also being very slippery, which is fine for most supports. Again, there's just no skill expression of the character. Like, there's only so much that you can do. The only really broken part of her kit is Fade, which could be made some cooldown tweaks. Not every character needs to be mechanically demanding. I'm so tired of that argument, guys. I have had to defend that argument over and over and over again. I want you to name the number of non-mechanically demanding characters that are on this top kit, okay? Brigitte, arguably. Reaper's not fair. Diva, arguably. I understand that one is tricky. Rhine, Winston, okay? There are people up here that I think that we can work with, right? I do. It's to me, it's kind of dishonest to say, like, yes, there are more mechanically demanding characters up here, but like if you look down here, hey, we got freaking Widowmaker and Hanzo. Idiari, where all she does is mechanics. And you can make the same argument with Roadhog. I know Roadhog has a relatively medium to high skill floor. I know that. That's why you don't see Roadhog abused as much in bronze, because you do have to hit your hooks. It doesn't mean that he's a good character. And shockingly, that there is a slight mechanical bias in a first-person shooter. Crazy how that works. Crazy how that works. Because saying this statement implies something, right? It implies something. That being said, she should never be meta because of the low skill floor. Sure. But as a character, she's fine for newer players. I've talked about this. In my opinion, I just think that lower skill characters hurt people that are trying to play not more mechanically demanding characters, but more interesting characters. You can have characters with low skill floors and high skill ceiling. Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yo! Whoa! Hey, look, it's you! Yes! Fight the good fight! Fight the good fight! Why is your profile 18 plus? And why does it say DM me? It would be funny. Okay, well, I apparently have friends in low places. Okay, should every character be visible at higher ranks? I think that that's honestly like an admirable goal. Obviously, it's impossible, but I do think that that would be like a decent goal if you're able to get there. But I think it is a little bit unrealistic. My cats are freaking out. Kitties. Okay, anyway. My issue, she's being low skills, is she's also very niche. So if you have a lot of players to pick her up, I'd say she's not very niche until you get to higher ranks. But, okay. But he doesn't do anything proactive against the other team. Moira can do both. Makes her useful in higher ranks. Okay. People cry and moan about Moira, but she's an empty stat hero. You can pretty much have to be playing like TikTok Moira to get value out of her. Partly true. Yes, partly true. Partly true. She does offer a lot of value as a stable DPS and massive heals if used correctly. No. Stable DPS is very niche because a lot of times the Moira's range, you can't really put pressure as like a Baptiste or Anakin helping your team because you can't really reach the characters that you want to reach most of the time, which is why you generally see her played more like a Kiriko or more like a backline flanker at higher levels. People who play her as a DPS are most likely to be hard stuck gold at best. I got bad news for you guys, all right? I got bad news for you guys. Bad news for you guys. The higher rank Moiras exclusively are more DPS oriented. Exclusively. I have coached 3 top 500 Moiras, and 2 of them were DPS only Moiras that got to top 50. I don't, and so much so that they actually got banned. They actually were banned because, I mean, honestly, they were kind of rightfully abusing. Like I feel like if you're hard flanking is more literally every game, it's a little bit goofy, right? But they got top 500. So this is again insanity. Like it's just actually totally false. Rating Genji as S tier is literally a bias. Oh well, thank you for stating that the obvious that my opinion is bias. Which is also ironically could be biased from you, but while Genji's not the strongest DPS, both of his abilities are really the best in the game at the fundamental level. Bro, we're not even fishing in like all the downvoted comments, guys. We're not even trying. Like I'm telling you, I'm not like I could go through, r/Overwatch or the Battle.net forums or the downvoted comments in Overwatch University and fill up this React content. But this is why I couldn't believe this, man. Well, let's just say I'm just glad Spilo's in charge of game designs for Overwatch. Thank you, cattle enjoyer. There's absolutely no way Reinhardt and Lucio are both fine when Ryan is so reliant on Lucio to be good. Now, I understand the argument there. Yeah, I think that, Reinhardt and need tweaks is true. I think that's a fair criticism. Lucio, not so much. But remember, one being reliant on the other doesn't mean that both are broken. Second only to Pharah and Mercy in that aspect, in my opinion. And I also think that Pharah and Mercy, like old Pharah and Mercy, old Pharah was way more reliant off of Mercy. Current Ryan is not as reliant off of Lucio outside of pro meta. I think he benefits a lot from Lucio, but you can still do fine without a Lucio 95% of the time. So even this is not accurate. There's a lot of characters in the bottom tier simply because they're defensive. Shocker. Defensive characters do not have dynamics of cooldowns, generally. Because the concept of defensive characters is more static. It's not just static in terms of, they don't dive in. Because I would not describe an Ana as a static character or a defensive character or even Zenyatta or even Cassidy. But they have choices to go aggressively or not. Whereas Torbjorn, the only dynamic is, do I use Overload to do damage from range or do I wait to get Dove and then deny them the ability to get the kill? And Iliari is, where do I put my pylon? We talked about this again with the SK video where defensive people are risk averse. So defense oriented characters are generally don't go well with human psychology. Life or bro, like what? 80% of this list is just aggressive character equals good, defensive character is bad. Being defensive is not a broken character. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is. Sorry, it is. It is. If your character design is mostly around defense, there's a reason why they removed those monikers from Overwatch 1. Because not only were they but also partially inaccurate, but it was misleading in hero design. It's crazy. It's crazy that people think this. Like, do you not play? Do you not understand the value? There's been YouTube essays about the problem of reactive only characters like Orisa and Malga and not Malga nowadays is a little bit unfair, but right? It's incredible. And this is competitive Overwatch that normally understands this stuff. Here's another fun one. I don't agree that Ryan needs movement shield when shielding. This is what shield hopping is for. Guys, shield hopping doesn't increase your movement speed anymore. This hasn't been a thing since I swear Overwatch 1. When they increased Ryan's movement speed while shielding, shield hopping is really not increased your movement speed at all. The reason shield hopping is mostly still a thing, it does, but much more is because it's more about preserving your shield HP. It's more about preserving your HP. Torb is threatened by Spilo is threatened by Torb's unbridled manliness. Yeah. Anyway, that was it. I'm telling you guys, like it was crazy to me. Like it was crazy. Like I definitely going back, you could definitely nitpick some of my placements here and could have done this or clarified this and so on. I think it did clarify most of those things in the discussion, but most people are not going to watch the video. They're just going to look at the results and then comment off of that. But this was, it was insane. I could not believe that this was in the competitive Overwatch subreddit, that this was what was being commented. This subreddit is good. That's why my expectations were higher. Like, again, I'm not trying to beat on the subreddit, right? The subreddit's fine. Like, they have the best takes of any subreddit, in my opinion, right?
And obviously there's my own bias in here, of course. But I don't know, man. It's just crazy. The craziest thing was like the dissonance. Like at least when I go to r/Overwatch, I'm gonna expect what I'm gonna expect. I know what I'm gonna get, right? This one was like, these are the same subreddits that are literally trashing miserable of Torb and Iliari, and we hate Malg and I hate Roadhog, and then now we're like, oh well, defensive characters. Like what?